A reading from the book of the prophet Jeremiah. The word of the Lord came to me thus: Gird your loins, stand up and tell them all that I command you. Be not crushed on their account, as though I would leave you crushed before them. For it is I this day who have made you a fortified city, a pillar of iron, a wall of brass against the whole land, against Judah's kings and princes, against its priests and people. They will fight against you, but not prevail over you, for I am with you to deliver you, says the Lord. Verum Domini. I will sing your salvation. In you, O Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your justice, rescue me and deliver me. Incline your ear to me and save me. I will sing your salvation. Be my rock of refuge, a stronghold to give me safety. For you are my rock and my fortress. O my God, rescue me from the hand of the wicked. I will sing your salvation. For you are my hope, O Lord, my trust, O God, from my youth. On you I depend from birth. From my mother's womb you are my strength. I will sing your salvation. My mouth shall declare your justice, day by day your salvation. O God, you have taught me from my youth, and till the present I proclaim your wondrous deeds. I will sing your salvation.
Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Alleluia,
Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Lectio Sancti Evangelii secundum Marcum.
Gloria tibi, Domine.
Herod was the one who had John the Baptist arrested and bound in prison on account of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip, whom he had married. John had said to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Herodias harbored a grudge against him and wanted to kill him, but was unable to do so. Herod feared John, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man, and kept him in custody. When he heard him speak, he was very much perplexed, yet he liked to listen to him. She had an opportunity one day when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his courtiers, his military officers, and the leading men of Galilee. Herodias' own daughter came in and performed a dance that delighted Herod and his guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask of me whatever you wish, and I will grant it to you." He even swore many things to her. "I will grant you whatever you ask of me, even to half of my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" She replied, "The head of John the Baptist." The girl hurried back to the king's presence and made her request. I want you to give me at once on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was deeply distressed, but because of his oaths and the guests, he did not wish to break his word to her. So he promptly dispatched an executioner with orders to bring back his head. He went off and beheaded him in the prison. He brought in the head on a platter and gave it to the girl. The girl in turn gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard about it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. Verbum Domini. Today we observe the feast of the martyrdom, or the beheading of St. John the Baptist. And I guess the question I would ask this morning is, why wasn't John at that party? Everyone else was at the party. Why wasn't John invited to the party? He was this religious figure. Herod was perplexed when he listened to John preach, and yet there was something that attracted him to what John was saying. And in our own day, we would invite somebody who's kind of an interesting figure in society, or someone who is this eloquent speaker, someone who a lot of people were following, whether they were controversial or not. If we were a big wig, we'd have them at our party. So the question would be, why wasn't John at that party? And maybe it's because he knew something that no one else knew. Or did everyone else at the party also know what John knew? But they weren't a threat. They weren't going to say anything. They didn't make Herod and Herodias feel guilty. And I have a feeling it's that second one. Everyone else at that party knew who Herod was and who Herodias was. They knew that Philip was the half-brother of Herod and that Herodias had been his wife. Some say that Herodias was also the daughter of Herod's other brother. And so what John the Baptist was accusing Herod of was, not only have you taken another man's wife, and that other man is not dead, so you're committing adultery, you're living in adultery, but that's your niece. And so you're living a relationship that is incestual. And Herodias responded the way that anyone would respond. She was very threatened. I'm not canonizing her. I'm not defending her. But if we put ourselves in that situation, isn't this how we respond? She felt, if I respond to what John is saying, it means I have to leave the palace. It means I lose my power. It means I lose my comfort. It means I'm cast out away from this relationship that I want to be living in. And so Herod has to deal with the guilt. Herodias has to deal with the guilt. And men and women deal with this in very different ways. But the same thing happens today. How many of us in our own families deal with similar situations to this? This is not something that's happened only once in history. We all know situations that shouldn't be the way that they are. And if you dare to be John the Baptist, you don't even have to say anything. You simply look at that and say, and what do people say? You shouldn't judge. That's what John the Baptist would have been told. You shouldn't judge. Or a good word that's used today is negative. You're so negative. For saying somebody's living in sin? For saying somebody is going to hell? For saying there's a situation that's not so good for them? Oh, you're so negative. That's what I grew up hearing. My mother was often told how negative she was. And it worked to my advantage because there were times when I was doing things that I didn't want anybody telling me not to do, or I didn't want to feel guilty, so I could just imply, you're so negative. But, we have to speak the truth. That's why John the Baptist is considered a martyr. We ask the question, well, did he die for Christ? He died for the truth. And the truth is, Jesus is the truth. And he died as a witness to that light that Christ brought into the world. Many times we're told, and I want to say this, that there are many of our listeners who are in irregular situations in their marriages. And before you turn off the television, I'm not here this morning to condemn you, but I want you to not change the channel quite yet. And I don't want you to hit the off button on your remote control, because the church can assist you, as John the Baptist desired to assist Herod and Herodias in remedying their situation. So often we hear, though, from couples in this situation, this kind of phrase that the church doesn't understand the ways of the heart. We are just supposed to teach doctrine, and you don't worry about me falling in love. Well, you falling in love can go against the moral teaching of the church. Or there's this accusation often thrown out, the church does not need to concern herself with what goes on in my bedroom. And I would say three things in response to those accusations. The first one is that the church understands the human heart quite well. And a priest, whether he's old or young, tends to understand the human heart pretty well. Why? Because we happen to have one. Just because we make a commitment of celibacy doesn't mean that somehow we turn into stone. That we don't understand how emotions and attractions can work. We understand that very well, and so many people come to us in confession and in direction, and so we get to hear the gamut of how love works. I could make movies based on all of the relationships that we hear about and the permutations and the way people propose to one another to get married. My goodness, if Hollywood would call me, I would tell you there's some fantastic ways that people have come up with proposing and also breaking up. I heard an account of a young man who broke up with a girl that he had gotten engaged to, and it wasn't going so well. So he took her out to the side of the ocean, or this big body of water, asked for the ring back, tied it on this piece of string, hooked it on an arrow, and shot it out into the water, and basically said, it's over. I thought, well, it doesn't need to be quite that dramatic. The ring is buried forever. But that's how he was saying, I profess this love for you. Now it's over. And talk about crushing somebody. I was even blown away by that. I thought, wow, that's quite... Hollywood, give me a call. I'll tell you how it works. We'll get some drama out there. But that's the first thing. The church does understand the human heart quite well. The second thing is that I would say is the church understands the immortal soul of man even better. So we not only understand the human heart, but we understand the workings or God's design for the immortal soul of each man. And thirdly, the church is not as concerned about your bedroom as you'd like to think. Many people think they're so fascinating there. The church is not that concerned about your bedroom as much as she is concerned about what goes on in hell. And based on your behavior in your bedroom, your immortal soul could end up in hell. This is the approach that the church takes. Why she shows, like a mother, this care and concern for the good of each of her children, that we not get ourselves into situations that can jeopardize our eternal life. And so often we overlook that. When we're in good health and when we're feeling good, when we're deeply in love, nothing can take that away from us. So yes, hell can take that away from us very quickly. You know, a wrong relationship can put us in a wrong place for all eternity. And that's how the church approaches each of her children. When she seems so negative at times, or when she may come across as one who is judging, the response that the church is giving in her believers is saying, don't jeopardize your eternity. You know, pleasure today may end up in suffering forever. And the suffering that comes in hell is the suffering you don't want to endure. So make a sacrifice today, or be patient today, or wait today to make sure that you enter into a relationship that is right with God, so that you can enjoy His grace in that relationship and enjoy His goodness for all eternity in heaven. And so what we hear in the gospel today, this is what I would say, especially to our viewers. Many of you write to us, many of you contact us asking for help. What do I do? Where do I turn? How do I remedy my situation? Maybe I'm in a relationship for the past 25 years, for the past 40 years. I've been married to this person, and I know that he's not my husband. I know that I'm in a situation that needs an annulment. But what do? I feel I can't go walking into the rectory. Oh, yes, you can go walk into the rectory. And I would just say this, and most priests today, they're going to give you a little bit of a hard time, because that's what we do. They're not going to condemn you. They're going to look and say, well, how did you get yourself into this situation? We all know how we get ourselves into these situations. But don't be turned off immediately if Father doesn't give just this perfect response, Oh, yes, my child. He might he might have had a bad day. It has nothing to do with you. He might be a little bit tired. He might be confused. He might sit and look at you and think to himself, okay, now what do we do to help this soul? And that's what every priest, their ultimate response is going to be. How do we help this soul get back in the right way with Christ? And it may take some time. He can't snap his fingers and magic. Everything falls into place. He's going to advise, well, this is going to maybe take a year or two, but let's get started. I would tell people who are in this situation, may be afraid to talk to any priest. Just go to your local parish. Go to Mass there. Maybe you're not able to receive communion, but you can pray. You're welcome to come to our church at any time. If you're a fallen away Catholic because of your situation, your marriage situation, don't let that prevent you from coming back. Come on Sunday and listen to the homily. Pray with your brothers and sisters. And ask the Holy Spirit, help me to find Father. Help me to find the priest that I'm supposed to talk to. And maybe the first church you go to, you say, well, he's a really nice priest, but I don't think he's too young. He's not going to understand. Go to another parish, you listen to him for a while and you say, he's too old, he's not going to understand. Go to the third parish, that's the one I got to talk to. Pick up the bulletin, call the phone number, and all you have to say is, Father, you know what? I haven't been to church for a while. I was at your Mass listening to you preach. I need to talk to you about something. It has to do with my marriage. And Father's going to know, got an idea. And he's dealt with this time and time again. But don't leave it unattended. And don't live in fear of what the answer will be. The answer from Father is not going to be, there's nothing we can do, you're damned. That's not the response you're going to get. He's going to say, well, this is how we need to address this step by step by step. And confide in him the fear you have. Herodias was afraid. Herodias knew that if she owned up to the situation she was in, she would have to separate from Herod. And that have been the best thing for her to do. This man was a crazy man. But she knew that if I do this, my situation, my comfort, it might be jeopardized. Well, in today's world, as we deal with marriages, your situation might be seemingly jeopardized for a time. You know, what if I all of a sudden own up to this and say, well, really, I'm not married? What if my spouse leaves me then? Well, if you truly were in love with each other, is the other person going to suddenly walk off after 10, 15 years? Trust him or her, but you may need to live as brother and sister for a time as the church helps you process the situation. Maybe you're in the need of an annulment. I don't want to go through all that process. Well, be willing to go through that process. The healing that is needed so that you can have God's grace. The question I have for so many married people who are in irregular situations is, married life is hard enough. And how in the world do you persevere in that without the grace of God? If I was a married person, I would want every single possible grace I could get from the Lord so I could make this thing just as alive and healthy as possible. And this is what the church wants to provide for you. Live in the light, live in the truth, live in the grace of Christ. And your married life can be such a blessing for you. Why do you want to live something that's a deception or that's a lie or that I am always covering up or preventing anybody from knowing? Who wants to live like that? Jesus doesn't want you to live like that. Live the freedom that comes from living in the truth. And so St. John the Baptist was inviting of Herod and Herodias the same thing that the church does today. He wasn't standing there ready to damn them. He wouldn't rejoice in their condemnation. But he sought what Christ himself would speak is a change in their life, a conversion, and that they live in the truth. And so this is the desire of the church. It doesn't do any good for us to respond the way that Herod or Herodias did. So many people in these situations look at the church and they seek opportunity to lop the head of the church off so it's quiet. That's what Herod did with John the Baptist ultimately. Let's take his head off and he'll shut up. Well, did it change the situation they lived in? No. Herodias wanted the same thing. Herodias would be like a little child today who their mother is trying to tell them what to do, and what do little kids do? No. I can put my fingers in my ears all day and I can scream and holler. I can make noise of my own. But what am I living in? Silence and noise of my own making. I'm isolated again from Christ and from the truth. Why do that? And that's what the church is inviting. Don't turn against the messenger of the truth, the messenger of Christ, the messenger of the gospel. but heed the invitation. Conversion, changing our situation, is not always easy, but it's the most blessed experience that you will have to respond to the prompting of grace.